Revelation proof, a documented truth that cannot be argued away. 5 days after burying her 6-year-old daughter, she got a phone call. Not condolences. A demand. $40,000. From her mother, calling from a Honolulu airport, with sand probably still in her shoes. And what her mother didn't know, what nobody in that family had bothered to check, was that 4 years earlier, they had signed a document swearing that money was a gift, a real document, with their names on it, filed in a bank vault. That document was about to sit on a white tablecloth in front of 40 witnesses, and there was nothing her family could do to make it disappear. Have you ever been handed a bill for something someone told you was free? My name is Danielle. I drive trucks for a living, and I am going to tell you about the year my family decided what my daughter's life was worth and the single piece of paper that made sure they couldn't rewrite that answer. I was 500 miles east on a refrigerated run when my phone lit up at a fuel island in Ohio. Tom had picked our daughter Lily up from her grandmother's because of weather. He took the county road home. There's a low water crossing past the Henley farm, a concrete dip where a creek runs under the road. On a dry day, you'd never think about it. That day, the water came up while they were on it. They found his truck a quarter-mile downstream, wedged against the cottonwoods. 2 days later, after the water finally dropped, Lily was 6. I drove home in 9 hours. I did not sleep. I did math the whole way, all the wrong kinds of math, the kind that doesn't change anything and that you do anyway. Casseroles on the porch, the sheriff's truck in the drive. And the first call I made before I could even get the words out was to my mother. I thought she would come. My mother's first question was whether the funeral could wait 2 weeks. And what came after that question was worse than the question itself. She had a trip planned. Hawaii, 8 days. Non-refundable deposits. My father, my brother Nathan, his wife Mallory, the grandkids. Calendar since January. She said she understood that my husband and my daughter were dead in the tone you'd use for a coworker who'd missed a deadline. Then Mallory took over the group text. She wrote that surely I wouldn't want them to cancel the vacation over what she actually typed, for all of us to read a trivial event not worth attending. My mother replied 2 minutes later with a thumbs up and the word, agreed. Not one of them asked how Lily died, not Tom's middle name for the headstone, not whether I was eating, not whether I was alone in that house. I told them the burial would be Saturday. I hung up, and I did not call again. The front pew at the service was reserved for family. It stayed empty. My Uncle Ernest drove 4 hours from Joplin and stood next to me the whole time, hand on my shoulder like a man holding a fence post in a storm. Tom's dispatchers came in their work shirts. Lily's kindergarten teacher came and cried harder than I did. The soccer team showed up in their little blue jerseys because Tom had coached them on Saturdays. 100 working people packed in shoulder to shoulder to say goodbye to a truck driver and a 6-year-old girl. My parents were on a beach. And if you've ever watched someone sit in the front pew at your hardest moment, you know. But what do you do when the pew is just empty? 5 days after I buried my whole world, my mother finally got me on the phone. There was no "I'm sorry I missed it." She went straight to business like a woman calling about a late invoice. "Danielle, we need to talk about the money. $40,000. Her tone said I should already know. She told me Nathan's car dealership was failing, that the family needed to pull together, that I had to see the bigger picture, and when I didn't answer fast enough, She said the line I will hear in my sleep for the rest of my life, "We can always make more money. Danielle, we can't make more family." She said it to me, the daughter whose family was in the ground because they wouldn't fly home from the Honolulu airport with sand in her shoes, asking for $40,000 to save the son who'd been lying on a beach while my little girl went into the earth. What do you call using the word family as a crowbar? I held the phone away from my face and I looked at the 2 pairs of small yellow boots by the front door. Lily's, still lined up where she'd left them. I hadn't moved them. Then Nathan called to finish what my mother started. He's 33. Spent his whole life being the one my parents bankrolled. He'd opened the dealership with money he didn't have, the floor plan loans were eating him alive, and the lot was full of trucks nobody was buying. He didn't ask about Lily. He led with the dealership. Then he said the thing that told me everything. "Look, Danielle, you're alone now. What do you even need it for? You're alone now." As if my husband and daughter were a budget line they'd helpfully zeroed out for me. As if grief came with a refund. And that reframe "you don't need it anymore" changed what I understood about what they actually believed. Here's the question nobody in my family asked, but everybody should. Is there a version of asking a grieving person for $40,000 5 days after her child's funeral that isn't a form of theft? I'm not sure there is. Mallory texted that family money was a shared pool, that I'd taken from the pool once and it was someone else's turn, that my attitude was hurting everyone. Then I learned from a cousin that they'd already been telling the extended family their version, that poor Nathan was struggling and selfish Danielle, sitting on her trucks, wouldn't lift a finger for her own blood. They'd built the story before I'd even said no. They just needed me to play the villain in it. Here's what I knew that they didn't. 4 years earlier, I'd wanted to buy my own rig. A good used tractor ran about $90,000. I'd saved most of it, but I was short, and Tom and I needed a bank loan to close the gap. When part of a down payment comes from family, lenders require the relatives to sign a document, a gift letter. It states the funds are a true gift. No repayment expected. Not a loan in any form. I drove the paperwork to my parents' kitchen table myself. I watched both of them sign it. I filed it away with the loan documents and forgot it existed. My mother had forgotten it too. Or she'd decided it didn't count anymore. Because now, with her son sinking and my whole life buried in the cemetery, she'd reclassified that gift in her own mind. It wasn't a gift now. Now it was an investment. A debt. An amount a family could demand back whenever it pleased. One night, a week into the calls, I actually sat down with my checkbook. $40,000 would empty my cushion, but it would make the phone stop ringing, and some exhausted part of me just wanted the noise to end. Ernest had taken to dropping by fixing things that didn't need fixing, sitting in Tom's chair so it wouldn't be so empty. He saw the checkbook open on the table. He didn't yell. He just said, "You'd really write that check, wouldn't you? You'd pay them to keep skipping your funerals." I put the pen down. Because he was right. You don't owe a debt they swore wasn't one. If you've ever been the person everyone leans on, the one who packs the lunches, absorbs the cost, smooths the damage, when was the last time anyone caught you? I capped the pen, closed the checkbook, and the next morning I did the one thing that had never once let me down. I went to work. But what I found when I started cleaning out Tom's old rig to free up cash, what was sitting in the door pocket under a folded map, his old paper logbook. 20 years of runs in his careful block handwriting. I couldn't open it. It felt like opening his hands. But I'd seen something as I lifted it. The last page wasn't a log entry. It was writing. More than a log entry. His handwriting filling the lines. He'd written something there, before he died. And it was sitting 2 feet from me, waiting. It took me 3 more days to open it. And what I read on that last page didn't just change what I did next, it changed what I built. He'd titled it the way he titled everything, plain and direct. Things we're going to do. Buy our own rig, paid off, no bank. Get our name on the door. And then the line that took the floor out from under me, Carver and daughter. So Lily grows up knowing her mama built something. He'd already named the company. For the little girl who drew trucks instead of princesses. There are moments in a life that feel like an instruction, not inspiration, an actual instruction. Tom had written a company name in pencil in a logbook he knew I'd eventually find. He didn't know he was going to die. He just knew what he wanted her to see while she was growing up. I named the company the week after I found that page. I kept the and daughter because some names you earn by loving someone, not by keeping them. I took a grocery chain contract that was too big for 2 trucks. I leased a third when the freight kept coming. I hired drivers, good ones, men and 1 woman who'd left bigger outfits because I paid fair and didn't lie. We painted the trucks deep green with the name in clean white letters down both doors. And under the name, small where you'd only notice if you looked, I had them paint Lily's 3 lumpy crayon trucks, traced exact from a drawing she'd clipped to Tom's visor 2 years before she died. The first time I saw all 3 rigs lined up in the yard with her artwork on the doors, I sat in my truck for a while. The broker who doubted I'd last the season called asking if I had overflow capacity. The bank officer who'd suggested I sell quietly upgraded my credit line. Funny how fast she'll never make it turns into, we always believed in you once the invoice is clear. I didn't gloat. I just remembered. Word traveled the way it does in a small town straight. To my family. The daughter who was alone now was running a real company with her name on 3 trucks. My mother sent the first warm text in months. We're so proud of what you've built, honey. So proud of the thing they'd tried to take $40,000 out of. I didn't answer. I made sure the certified copy of the gift letter was still sitting by the door. And then my cousin Renee called with her voice, pitched lower than usual, the voice people use when they're telling you something they're not supposed to. They were planning something. My parents' 40th anniversary party. The whole extended family invited. And Renee had been at my aunt's kitchen table when my mother and Mallory mapped it out. My father was going to stand up during the toasts and make a family appeal, put me on the spot in front of 40 relatives, frame it as the prodigal daughter refusing her family in their hour of need. They figured I'd either cave under the pressure of 40 people watching or refuse, and prove I was exactly the cold woman they'd been describing. A trap with 2 exits. Both leading where they wanted me to go. Have you ever walked into a room knowing someone built it specifically to break you and decided to walk in anyway? Renee thought I should skip it. Stay home. Don't give them the stage. For about 10 minutes, I agreed. Then something in me went very still. The way it does on a mountain grade when the brakes start to fade and you stop being scared and just start driving. They wanted an audience. 40 people gathered to watch them put me in my place, but an audience works both ways. They were building a stage to humiliate me on. I started thinking about what else you could do with a stage, and the truth, nobody in that room had been given yet. I called my bank. asked for a certified copy of the gift letter from my closed loan file. The woman on the phone said it would take a few days and a small fee. A few days and a small fee. That was the entire price of the document that was going to turn their faces to paper. I had the officer make a stamped, certified copy and drove it home flat on the passenger seat like it might blow away. The night before the party, I laid out my clothes, plain and dark, nothing designed to win anyone over. I put the certified copy in my coat pocket, one folded page, and set the coat by the door. I slept better that night than I had since the burial. When you finally know what you're going to do, fear has nowhere left to live. The church hall smelled like coffee and carnations. A long table with a white cloth, a sheet cake with my parents' wedding photo printed on it in sugar, a banner, 40 years in gold letters. About 40 relatives. I noted that number with grim precision. My mother saw me come in and her face did a complicated thing, surprise and triumph at once. She thought I'd walked into her trap. She had no idea what was folded in my coat pocket. She had no idea that Renee had also quietly started doing something in the weeks before, something involving a beach photo and a date, and 40 people who were about to do the math. My father stood, tapped his fork against his glass. The room went quiet. He thanked everyone for coming. He talked about family sticking together, about how times got hard and family was supposed to step up. Then he turned slow, deliberate to me. Some of us have been blessed and forgotten where the blessing came from. We helped Danielle when she had nothing, $40,000. And now that she's done well, she won't lift a finger for her own brother. Mallory added her line sweet as poison, just loud enough. We even missed that funeral for family. And this is the thanks. She'd said it again. In front of everyone. A trivial event. The room turned to look at me. My mother sat with her hands folded, certain she'd won. I set down my paper plate. I stood up. I did not raise my voice. 40 people were braced for a scene and I gave them quiet instead. Quiet in a loud room is the loudest thing there is. Dad, you're right that you gave me $40,000. Let's talk about that. But first, let's talk about the funeral, since Mallory brought it up. I reached into my coat. I took out a single sheet of paper and unfolded it slowly and laid it flat on the white tablecloth next to the wedding cake. A printed timeline. 2 dates. Plain. This is the day my husband and my daughter were buried. I pointed. And this, I moved my finger an inch, is the date on the beach photo Mom posted. 1 day later. Lace and cocktails. The caption said, "Making memories." I looked up. You didn't miss the funeral for family. You skipped a child's funeral for a vacation. Then you flew home and asked the grieving mother for $40,000. The room had gone very still. My father's mouth opened and closed. My mother's certainty drained out of her face. Then Nathan did what loud people always do when the quiet person won't flinch. He exploded. Up out of his chair, red-faced, that I was twisting things, that the dealership was failing, that I owed this family, that I was selfish, alone, bitter, the whole script at full volume in a church hall. I let him finish. When he ran out of breath, I reached into my coat one more time. The certified copy. I set it down next to the timeline and slid it toward my father. You both signed this 4 years ago at your own kitchen table. It says in your own signatures that the $40,000 was a gift, no repayment expected, not a loan in any form. I let that sit. So a demand to pay it back as a debt doesn't hold up. You can ask me for money. You can't bill me for a gift you swore wasn't one. Then I said the 3 things I'd come to say, gently. because they didn't need any force behind them. To Mallory, you taught me which events are worth attending. I'll remember that the rest of my life. To my mother, you told me we can't make more family. You were right, so I've stopped trying to make one out of you. To Nathan, still standing there, fists open now, you asked what I even needed it for. I needed it to bury my daughter. You needed Hawaii. Nobody spoke. Then a chair scraped at the back of the hall. Renee stood up. Clear as a bell, I was at that funeral. Everything she just said is true. I have the dates. The strongest thing in the room is never the loudest voice. It's the quiet person with the document. The room turned the way a heavy truck turns slow. And then, all at once, an aunt I'd barely spoken to in years quietly moved the gift letter so more people could read it. Folks who'd come ready to judge the cold, ungrateful daughter were now looking at a timeline and 2 signatures and doing the only honest thing left, which was to look ashamed of what they'd believed. My mother said my name once. Danielle, like she still thought there was a version of this where I sat back down and we had cake. There wasn't, and Nathan the loud one ran completely out of steam. For 1 second I saw it, the real thing under all the entitlement. He was terrified. He was going to lose the dealership and maybe the house, and his kids would feel it. He'd gambled the whole family on bullying me into covering it, and now the family was looking at him instead. "Danny," he said, quiet for the first time. "I'm scared." And I believed him. That was the closest thing to honest any of them had offered me in 11 months. I felt the old reflex twitch, the one that had packed his lunches since I was 9 years old. But he still hadn't said he was sorry about Lily. Not once. Not her name. Not that day. Not the empty pew. Scared for himself. Never sorry for me. People will tell you forgiveness is for you, not for them. Maybe, but nobody ever explains that you can genuinely hope someone finds their footing and still walk out of the room. Those aren't opposites. I picked up my 2 pages, I folded them back into my coat, and I said the truest thing I had left. I hope you figure it out, Nathan. I really do. But you're going to have to figure it out without me. Then I walked into the parking lot. The air was clean and cold, and I could breathe. The story that I owed them $40,000 died in that hall and never came back. The relatives who'd been ready to chip in for Nathan's repayment quietly closed their checkbooks once they'd seen the dates. The dealership folded that fall. I heard about it the way I hear about everything involving them now secondhand from Renee. With no feeling in my chest either direction, I went no contact. Not with a dramatic letter, not with a blow-up. I just stopped picking up, and after a while, they stopped calling. And the quiet that came in behind them was the most peaceful thing I'd felt in years. I kept the people who showed up. Ernest comes for Sunday dinner and sits in Tom's chair, and I've made my peace with that. Renee and I talk every week. Carver and daughter runs 5 trucks now, all of them deep green, all of them with 3 lumpy crayon trucks painted small on the doors where you'd only notice if you looked. People notice. Drivers ask about it at the truck stops, and I get to say her name out loud. Lily. My daughter. She drew that, and her name rides down every interstate Tom and I ever ran. I moved the little yellow boots, not far, just to a shelf where I can see them and still get out the door at 4 in the morning. Who actually showed up for you, not when it was easy, but when there was nothing in it for them? Drop that name in the comments right now. This one's for them. If this story hit something real, hit like not for the channel, but so the next person who needs it finds it. And if you've ever been the one everyone leans on while nobody catches you, you're exactly who When Family Revenge Strikes is built for. Subscribe, because the next story starts where this one ends. Family isn't blood. It's the people who show up when there's nothing left to gain and stay gone when there is.